Okay, and if you can share the screen.
Okay, sharing now. Can you see it? Oh, it shared the whole screen, huh?
There we go. And can you make it a little bit bigger? Perfect. Okay, then we're going to get started. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of Friday, December the 10th, 2021. And if you can scroll down to the agenda, we have no public comment. Our roll call. I'm Doug Case, and I am the chair of the committee. I'll look at our participants tab to do the roll. We have Patrick Anderson, a member of the committee. Kate Yavendetti, who is with Women Occupy and is our liaison with San Diegans for Justice. We have Elena Conde, who is the commission's executive assistant. We have Brandon Hilpert, who is the chair of the commission. We have Diana Dent, a member of the committee, and we have Charmaine Mosley, the interim executive director. Did I get everybody? Okay, I'll go through the updates quickly so we can get to our business. The budget process, the city has begun the budgeting process for the fiscal year 2023, which would be the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1. We've had some discussions with them. Their budgeting process is very confusing, at least it is to me, and I think maybe Brandon and Charmaine will concur. So I won't go into a lot of detail on that. I will be excited to have our administrative aide on staff so that we can have somebody who's dedicated to the budget process to help us in understanding the city processes and what all their numbers mean. Staffing, I think we are still on process to have our administrative aide, is that the correct title? On staff next Monday, and that's the person I was just talking about. Nothing new on the implementation ordinance and standard operating procedures, other than I put on the agenda that we'd asked Henry last week if we could have access to the next draft at least 10 days prior to it being docketed or scheduled for PSNLN. And he indicated it was his understanding that they could not release it to us prior to releasing it to the public, but that he would see if they could release it to everybody 10 days in advance. And he's not here to report back on that. And so if he's able to join us or Tiffany's able to join us, we can circle back to that. Nothing new on office space, nothing new on standing rules. Is there anything new on community outreach? I know that there was an event, I think in January, that was talked about last week, but I don't know if there's anything else scheduled or not.
There's nothing new to report.
Okay. And then we have some good news, but we can't say much about the legal counsel contract. All we can say is that there is at least one valid bid, and we can't indicate whether there's one or more than one. And we can't make any comments about the quality of the bid, and we are actually even prohibited from talking to other members of the selection committee about the bids. And so we are bidder bids. So we are in the process of scoring, and we have a meeting set up, kind of a check-in meeting with a person from purchasing and contract after this meeting we had the orientation of the process, and the bid or bids distribution was made, and we're having a check-in process immediately after this meeting. And so hopefully we'll be able to share some more specific news at our next meeting. If you can go down to unfinished business. If you could move that on the screen, please.
Sorry, my mouse got stuck.
Okay, no problem. Okay. And the first item I put on here just so that we keep on track on that. Last time we discussed the implementing the requirement to review and evaluate the department's compliance with various reporting requirements. We decided to ask the is it Captain Jordan, who is scheduled to make a presentation to the commission at our January meeting, to include that in his presentation. And we also talked about talking to other oversight agencies within California and other people with expertise to make sure we have a complete list of requirements that we're going to review and evaluate. I don't recall specifically if we named anybody who was taking on that task of checking.
It was me.
Okay.
But well, I was going to write to some researchers. I wasn't going to write to oversight boards, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. This is the end of our finals week, so
Yep.
I'll do it within the next week.
Okay, and it's not time sensitive, but I put it on the agenda so we would not lose track of it. And maybe we can circle back and see who else we want to contact and who will be responsible for contacting them. But I want to spend our time today talking about the executive search firm specs, and then the hiring of the policy.
I have a question, Doug.
Yes.
So you indicated that Captain Jordan is going to be talking about this at the January open session meeting. Does that mean that there is no December open session meeting?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
just to chime in on that, because the December open session usually falls kind of between Christmas and New Year's, we always cancel that. So it's we don't ever really hold December meetings, open meetings rather.
Okay, and then we talked about moving up the policy analyst and performance auditor hires, and Charmaine was and is checking to see whether or not we can use some cost savings to do an executive search process with those as well. And my understanding is that she's still waiting on that information. Is that correct, Charmaine? Is she still here? Yeah, she's on mute. She had to step away. Okay, and I just got a note that Joe will not be able to join us today because he has a medical appointment. But that's my understanding from our conversation yesterday. But again, I want to keep that on the agenda as well, because we want to begin that process as soon as possible, with or without an executive search firm. I think it's important that we initiate the process of those hirings. And what I want to focus on today is new business, and that is the scope of services for the executive search firm for the deputy executive director. And Joe and I met on Wednesday morning and looked at the contract with city has with, I think the name of the firm is Hawkins, which was the firm that was selected to do the executive search firm for the city's new chief executive officer for diversity and equity. I'm sorry, race and equity, I think is the title. And we used the specs that were in that contract as the basis for what we would use to get bids. And purchasing and contracts gave us three firms that they use to get their bids for the contract, and our plan is to use those same three firms, and the contract has to be less than $25,000. And since this is not as complicated a position as the other position is, we think they should be able to accomplish that. Joe was surprised that they were able to get a bid for that amount based on his experience, but I'm hoping that we would be able to get similar bids as the city was able to get for the other position. And so if you could go on down to scroll down, and hopefully everybody had a chance to look at this prior to the meeting. Let's go down. Continue. It's the
Which
next,
part?
it's the next
Oh.
page.
It's only the 2 pages,
Oh, you don't have the,
the full one. Let me. Maybe I downloaded the wrong one.
Yeah, I actually didn't. This is all I saw too. I don't know why, but Doug, I didn't see any attachments.
There was no attachments.
that is weird because
Oh,
when I,
I received attachments.
yeah, when I downloaded it this morning, that's weird because I downloaded the one that came with the email and I downloaded it this morning and it had the attachment. That's really weird. Let me see, 'cause I thought I had it.
And as I said, I received them. I think 2 emails go out. And so I don't know if it was just on the second one.
Perhaps that's what it was.
While we're trying to find that, I just wanted to note the time on the meeting. You probably need in the agenda. It still says it goes until 11:30, which isn't accurate.
Oh, thank you. And that's probably my mistake. I think I put it there. I used the previous week's agenda to create it. And a couple of weeks ago, when I was absent, I thought that.
Here, I
we'd be-
just shared the screen and I can go to that.
Yeah, sorry about that. And so a couple of weeks ago, when I thought we were gonna,
Doug?
yes, I got that.
Oh, hang on.
And so I'll remember, well, actually, this one has the correct time. Oh, no, but that's the minutes. That's not the,
Yeah, I
Oh,
just started sharing this. Doug, what page did you want to go to?
oh, yes, I scroll down past the minutes. Here we go. And maybe make it a little bit bigger since people are going to be reading this for the first time.
Sorry, I had to switch back to my earbuds. Did you ask me to change something?
Yeah, if you can make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So, because we're going to be looking at it for the first time for some people. And okay. And so I kind of walk you through it. And again, this was based on the specs that were included in the contract for Hawkins, and much of it is word for word. The overview, I think, is pretty. Let's continue on down. Is pretty generic. Pulled that wording from the wording that we used when we got approval for the position. And so basically, the overview, I think, is pretty straightforward. And then a detailed job description, which was the job description that was at the end of this, what is attached to this attachment is mentioned there. And so in the Hawkins, a lot of the stuff that was in the job description was included in the overview, but we thought it would be best to provide the bidders with the full job description. And we also added to the job description the compensation range, because that'll be important in the process of that. And then Joe suggested that we also put in there somewhere, and this is where I put it, that we want the process to be confidential. The concern being that sometimes people who are currently employed with a different agency don't want their employer to know they're looking for other jobs. And as you'll see in a moment, one of the specific requirements is that they don't go too fast. Wait, go back up, please. There you go. Yeah, you go back up to where we were. Yeah, stop that for a second. Okay. And then actually go back up one more sentence. Okay, yeah, stop. Okay. And so we put in there that the selection process would be confidential with no public announcement of candidates, no public announcement of candidates. Actually, I need to add the word until. And actually, I'm wondering if I ought to pull up the original document. I think I will, and then I can edit as we go along. So Brandon, if you can stop sharing. This will take just a second. I'll need to go find that document, then we can edit as we go along. So okay. And my computer takes a minute to, oh shoot. this is going to take a minute. So Brandon, why don't you go back and share? I have an old version of Microsoft Office 2010 that I got from the university, and I install it on my computer, and Microsoft doesn't like that because they want me to subscribe to their newest version, so it takes them a long time. Sometimes when I open up a 2010, it reinstalls it for me. So while it's doing that, I will make a note that I need to add the word of no public announcement until an offer has been made and accepted. So we're missing the word.
So
there.
Doug, what I just did is I'll save this the PDF and I'll send it back out. I just did a little note and then I just added
Okay.
that. So that way when we make edits, I can just type them in and then can make them in the master document.
Okay, so I can just go through these one by one. Most of them I think should be straightforward. The contractors and the contractor would be the search firm. Recruitment, sourcing, and outreach services should seek a diverse, qualified executive candidates for the deputy executive director of the commission. And the second one is that the consultant shall conduct interviews to gather data from key stakeholders to develop a candidate profile that includes qualities of an ideal candidate. And this one we kind of specialized for our commission to be a little bit different process. We suggested that there be essentially 3 interviews. One would be with the interim executive director, who the person would report to. And the second one would be a meeting with this group, the ad hoc committee, to get our input. And then the third one is we were going to ask Patrick if he could put together a Zoom meeting of some community leaders to give input. And then the purpose of those 3 meetings is basically to get an understanding of what we would like to see in the position prior to them going out to recruiting. And so hopefully Patrick is willing to do that. And,
Patrick is willing to do that.
okay, and move down to the next paragraph, please. Okay, and I think you went too far.
Oh, starting here with consultant. That was
Okay.
the next paragraph.
Okay, sorry. The consultant conducts a national search of the most highly qualified candidates for the position through the following activities, using the consultant's professional networking. And actually, you can take out the words through the following activities. Because we just made the no, yeah, just that, no, just those, the words through the following activities, those 4 words we want to delete.
Okay.
Because we combined it all into one sentence. And so, okay, using the consultant's professional networking and databases, personally contacting all potentially highly qualified candidates, including both active job seekers and passive candidates who may not be actively job searching. And that's why we thought it was important to assert the confidentiality, because we want them to be able to use their contacts to talk to people who may already have a job and say, hey, this may be something you would be interested in considering. And that was taken directly from the Hawkins. And the next one is also, almost all these are directly from Hawkins. A consultant shall share a list of all applicants that meet the minimum requirements with the city. And from this list, prepare a short list of highly qualified candidates recommended to move forward with the interview process. The short list should range from 5 to 10 highly qualified candidates. In the short list, the consultant will provide a detailed summary profile of each candidate proposed for advancement to the interview phase. And it's
I have a question, Doug. Are we going through this, or if we have a question about a particular paragraph, should we raise it at that point?
yes, raise it at that point.
So I had a question about the prior paragraph.
Okay.
It talks about the consultant just doing their search through their professional network and databases, but we had also talked about including other searches, such as sending it out to the NACO list and, other like bars, so minority bars and diverse bar associations in San Diego and that sort of thing. So how does that get included in this national search? And
That'll be included later when we talk about the city's requirements. So that the specs talk about what the consultant does, and then there's a section of what the city does. And so when we
okay.
talk about posting it,
okay,
we can,
so it's really two searches, so that there's the consultant is doing a national search and then the city's doing its own. Is that right?
well, there's one search, but my understanding is that the city will post the position, and it sounds like all of the applicants go to the so instead of, since it's a non-classified position, they have more flexibility, and so the applicants would be instructed to send their resume and their
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the search was not limited to what this search firm is doing and what's in their
right, yeah,
contract that they're doing.
yes, and so it's not
The
to,
other scope of the search isn't in here, so I just wanted to make that
Okay.
clear.
and it actually may be good to add some more specificity when we get down to the city's requirements. And so when we get to that, let's do that. Okay, and then so move on down to the next paragraph. Did anybody have any questions about that paragraph? And so basically what it means is the consultant,
Sorry,
yes.
I do. So I agree with Kate. I think we should sort of front load the one way to ensure what you're talking about is in this paragraph, consultant shall share a list. Because that makes it sound that they're sharing a list of applicants from their own database, given
No.
what Kate just read. So
no, that's not accurate. What happens is all applications.
I
go to them.
understand, but it sounds like that based on this paragraph. So I'm just suggesting an additional clause. Consultant shall share a list of all applicants from its own network and others who have applied, or something like that.
Okay, hold on just a second here. Okay. Now it looks like Word is going to open without going through reinstalling it, and so it'll take just 30 seconds, and so maybe I can open up my document. Okay, I've got it open on mine, and so Brandon, if you can stop sharing, and then I'll open it in mine, and we can make those changes as we go along. And share, okay. And is that showing to everybody? Okay, and then I'm going to go to my document, and so the changes we already made, yeah, was
Yeah, it was the last sentence right before offer, when that first sentence, right, candidates of or until.
Yeah, with no public
until
announcement.
An offer has been made.
Candidates, yeah, until, we're gonna have the word until there. Oops. Okay, and then the next one was in.
It was the last sentence on that page right there, where it starts with the word position. We were taking out through the following activities. It's the very last sentence on the page. It's the sentence, the line that starts with position.
I'm sorry, where is it?
Very bottom of that page. The last line where it starts with the word position.
Oh yeah,
position through the following. So we're just taking out through the following activities. We're keeping position, but we're removing. There you go.
Okay, and that was it, right?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're at the shall share a list of all applicants that meet the requirements. Then what did you want to add, Patrick?
He just put in chat that he had to step away, but I think what he wanted to say was consultants shall share a list of all applicants. And I think this is where he was going from their database. And I think it was something like as well as, I think he was trying to get at anyone that they find through their database, as well as anyone who happens to apply through the city or through any other channel.
Candidates who apply through the city or other channel or any other channel.
Right.
Okay, and then when he comes back, we can confirm that language. Okay, and then the consultant shall provide a draft interview questions for the city to use in interviews. The next one I put in red because I don't know exactly what it means, because the city conducts the background check. But this says the consultant shall describe the method and process for background checks, credential, education verification, and criminal background checks. And I don't know exactly what that means if the city provides that.
Well, and also, and Charmaine can probably chime in or clarify later. My understanding is we can't do background checks until the offer has been made.
That's
It's like
true.
this with commissioners. So I have a feeling this might be different now because, like, for example, with commissioners, we can't have the background check happen before a commissioner has
Right.
been appointed. So I would think it's the same for employees. So I think this is a little bit different now.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's they describe it to the candidates. I'm not sure who I'm not sure what the sentence means. Who they describe this process to. They describe the process, but I don't know who they describe it to.
We can verify with purchasing and contracting when we send this over to them.
Okay, I'm just going to leave that as clarify.
Yeah, I have a question about the prior sentence. The consultant shall provide draft interview questions to the city. I want to make sure that the consultant includes interview questions that come from the community forums. I don't exactly know what the language would be on that.
Okay, and draft interview questions.
Well, but and Doug,
That the consultant shall consider and issues and concerns or questions that have been raised in connection with.
How about incorporating
Yeah.
issues or how about incorporating input received
Right.
from the community
Period.
actually it's gonna be, how about with the interview with community representatives?
I would put that sentence prior to provide.
Say that again.
It should read, consulting shall incorporate input from the interview with community representatives and provide draft interview questions to the city for use in interviews.
I'm not sure how that's different than what I said.
It's coming after.
No, but the interview questions are to incorporate the input received from the interview with community representatives. And so they're going to use the input first to come up with and you'll see that in just a second. They're going to create a
They should incorporate feedback from.
that's what it says, Charmaine.
but if I can chime in real quick, I think we're overthinking that
First.
because this just says they will give us draft questions. I think
Mhm.
whoever the hiring committee is
Right.
can take those draft questions. We could add to them. We could delete them. I think we're almost making it a little more complicated than it has to be, because I think the idea is they'll propose some questions. We can then review it, decide if we like those questions. We could, like I said, we could add to them. we could, based on what we hear from the community, we could add new questions, modify them. I mean, I don't think we need to go too crazy on that, because it's not saying that's an exclusive list of questions.
Right. And,
Isn't
and
it still the case that the hiring committee could not have a community representative?
no, as you'll see, you're getting a little bit ahead of us again, Kate. So we have that, we incorporated that when we get down to it. So hold on just a second, okay?
Okay.
We did include a community representative on the hiring committee.
Well, how does that differ from me being kicked off of the hiring committee for the outside counsel? I thought it came from the city that couldn't happen. So is this different?
Because that's a bid.
Oh, okay. I mean, good.
I
I'm
think-
glad to hear that. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue.
And then the next one basically says that the interviews can be conducted via Zoom. And the next one, which was in their contract and according to Joe, is standard in these executive searches, that if we select somebody and that person doesn't stay with the city for a year, they redo the search at no cost to the city. And that's in the Hawkins contract, and Joe told me that's standard for these kind of contracts, and so that's good to know. And then the next section kind of gets into more specifics. The consultant will advise and consult with city staff on all elements of the recruitment interview process and best practices. The consultant will be available for virtual meetings with the commission selection committee to advise on the recruitment process, advise on the interview process, and discuss the highest qualified candidates. And then it says the consultant shall act as a primary point of contact between the candidates and the city and shall organize, lead, and schedule candidates for interviews. And so they handle the logistics, but it has the word lead in there, and I don't know what that means. Does anybody else know what that means? I can say organize and schedule candidates, but I don't know what lead interviews mean.
It typically means that they're responsible for organizing the entire visit. So this is for people who get flown in. That's what I'm assuming it means. That they handle all the logistics for these things.
Okay, then I'll keep that. And I just wanted to clarify what that meant. Okay, the next one is the city is responsible.
And I have a question, and that's fine if that's what it means, but I read it as meaning that they actually lead the specific interviews, that they're sort of the.
Well, and that was my concern too, Kate. So
chairs.
is it okay to schedule? I mean, if
That might
take
be
out-
true, actually, now that I'm thinking of it.
how about if we just take out the word lead, organize and schedule?
Well, but we do want them to manage the logistics. That
Okay.
means that they sort of take care of all the
How about organize and coordinate?
organize, coordinate, and schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the searches I've been a part of that have had executive search firms, no, now that I'm thinking of it, the search firm hands everything over to the chair of the hiring committee on the day of. So I think that really is about logistics, but yeah, I think coordinate will do that work.
Okay, and then the city's responsibility says the city will develop and produce a recruitment flyer from the consultant with input from the consultant relative to key priorities for position and core competencies. The city will draft and place advertisements with input from the consultant, and maybe that's, Kate, where we should including with NACOL. And who else do we want to include besides NACOL? And local, maybe it doesn't need to be
I
local,
would just say
and
local community organizations or something
local
like that.
community.
I said bar
Okay.
associations, but that's not, that's too limited.
Okay, and so I'll add that, and the city will, and so and that's kind of what I was referring to previously, is that the process is that the consultant meets with gets the input from the community, and then they draft the list of this is what we're looking for, and presumably, but we're more specific up above. The consultant will also base their interview questions on that same input, but I'm glad we added that previously. This is the
Yeah,
consider-
and this indicates that the background investigations would be done before the interviews. So maybe, I guess Charmaine's going to clarify that issue.
Yeah, well, and this was taken directly from the Hawkins. I don't know. It says the city will conduct references and background checks on the top candidates invited to participate in the city. So Charmaine, I'm going to put that in red, so maybe you can check with the city on that. Because the intent is we're going to, this is what this committee is proposing, and then Charmaine will be responsible for getting the bids. And so Charmaine, if you can check to see if that's still correct. Okay, and then the next one was taken directly from the Hawkins, except that I didn't put the amount. Why? The first sentence says that the amount is not to exceed $24,999. But in the fee schedule, they put the actual amount, which is 1/3 of that, but the bid could come in less than that. And so if it's a competitive bid, we could have somebody bidding for $20,000, and I don't want to specify the amount. So anyway, I said that whatever the bid is, the initial 1/3 is due upon contract execution. Take out the second 1/3 is due upon the delivery of the recruitment report, and the final third is due after the executive director interviews candidates. That's taken word for word, except that we took out mayor and put in interim executive director, because the final interview is done by the person they report to, which in this case would be the interim executive director.
And you want to put of the after delivery before recruitment report?
Delivery, I will, but I think it was missing from the one I copied from, because I didn't change that, but that's fine. Okay.
Where it says final 1/3 fee for the interim ED to interview the candidates, should that be the entire committee?
No, because as you'll see in a second, there is a 3-step interview process. So the first is a interview process that involves community leaders. And I'll talk about the specifics of that in a second. The second is the selection committee, and the final interview is with the interim executive director.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then on exhibit C is the time schedule. And in their contract, they specified dates, but that's because they already had a contract that was executed. And so I just put week 1, sequentially after the contract is executed, because this is for bidding purposes, not for contract purposes. And so the first one obviously is the contract is executed. And then week 2 and 3, they conduct the stakeholder engagement, which is what we talked about, meeting with Charmaine, meeting with this committee, and meeting with it could be a community forum that Patrick puts together, and that could be a fairly broad group because we're not worried about confidentiality at that point. And then week 4 is they review and finalize the recruitment flyer. And then weeks 5 through 6, after the flyer is done, that's when the city posted on their website, and they also posted on other relevant websites, which including NACOL. And that's the active recruitment period. And so the deadline would be the end of week 9. And then the next 2 weeks would be when the consultant screens the applicants for a short list of interviews and provides a reference list to the city of the top 5 to 7 candidates, so the city can conduct preliminary and final reference checks. And we shortened that from what they had for the city, the city's chief officer for race and equity. They had like 4 weeks, and we thought that was too long. And we can add another week there, but we're trying to get this person on board as soon as possible. So I don't know if there's any input, whether we should keep it 2 weeks or whether we should add a week to there. Any input? Seeing none, I'm going to keep it 2 weeks then. Okay, then the next one is the city consultant will the city and the consultant will meet to select the candidates to be interviewed for the interviews. And then the next week they would schedule the interviews, and the first round of interviews in the following week would be the interviews.
On week 14, do you want to put an S on schedule instead of a D? Schedules, interviews?
Schedules, thank you. Week 15, the first round of interviews, which will consist of a candidate making a presentation to a designated community group of 7 to 10 community leaders who will submit feedback to the selection committee. Community leaders required to complete a confidentiality agreement. And so Joe and I talked about that. We wanted to have some type of a way for community representatives to interview the top candidates. But we also asked, well, how do we do that? And my initial idea was kind of after what I've seen in the academic settings is we invite the top candidates in to make a presentation, and it's an open presentation and everybody can give feedback, and that doesn't work in a confidential environment. And so what we decided to recommend, and you guys can modify if you so choose, would be that we would have presumably Patrick come up with a designated group of community leaders who would participate in that, kind of what the city did when they did the police chief interviews. Of course, they had more than 5 to 7 people involved in that, but it was kind of a similar process. And that was very confidential. They had to sign confidentiality agreements and so forth. And so anyway, the proposal is to have the first quote interview be with community leaders who would then fill out the feedback forms, which would be submitted to the selection committee.
I like the idea of the general idea of this, but I don't like the phrase making a presentation. I'm not exactly clear what that would be in this context. And sure, we could ask them to put together a presentation on their approach to community engagement, but I don't think we would learn anything from that. I think it would be uninteresting. And so I would change that phrase to meeting with, or having an open-ended dialogue with, or some phrase like that.
Yeah, so the way I've seen it done in the past, and I've seen this on several different searches at the university at all kinds of levels, so they give them a topic which might be how to improve relations between the police and the community or something of that sort. And then it would be a broad topic, and then they would indicate how they would approach that. And
well, I think it needs to be clear that it is a dialogue and not just a presentation, that it's not just the community leaders sitting back and listening to what the candidates have
Yeah.
to say, but that it's
just,
a Q&A back and forth. So
yeah, well, yeah, let me finish. And
Well,
ones
I think
I've been to, I have been
that's-
like a presentation, and they have like a certain amount of time to do that. And usually it's like a PowerPoint presentation and so forth. And then there is Q&A with the representatives.
then I think it needs to be clear, a Q&A with consisting of a dialogue between, well, however,
Yeah, what consists of candidates making a presentation and engaging in dialogue?
Yeah.
Engaging.
in dialogue with, yeah.
With, and then we can work on what that presentation would be. It may just be, what is your background and how will that inform how you do it? Or,
I think we ask the people participating, the 7 to 10 community leaders, to come up with a theme or a set of questions that the person answers. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good too.
So
And
will Hawkins be, or whichever firm will be leading this?
no, I don't think so. I think that the interviews, I assume, are just would be like any other interviews. Since they don't lead the interviews, they just set up the interviews.
Well, I think what
So how is this
the
gonna,
question is
how
about
is,
this community set of interviews, and who's basically, leading it. Would that be Patrick? Would that be I mean, the whoever.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into that in the bid, but it could be a Patrick. And yeah, we could decide who that could be. Patrick may be the appropriate person to do that, I would think. And
I'm fine doing it, and I do it all the time at the university, so it's not, I mean, if
yeah,
if
and
that's
so
what we want to do, then that's what I'll do.
yeah, and then anyway, so we would do the presentation with the selected community leaders. We would select the community leaders. We would select the topic.
By the way,
and-
it looks like Tiffany is here. I don't know if anyone has noticed that or if someone
Yes,
wants to move her up.
We've been trying to promote her. Tiffany, if you
Okay.
see like the link, please accept the link.
And then week 16 would be the selection committee, and the selection committee would be comprised of the commission chair, the first vice chair, the community outreach chair, and a designated community representative. So that is the four we recommended. We'll interview the candidates and select the top candidates, rank ordered to be interviewed by the interim executive director. We talked about that and decided not to indicate how many candidates it would be, but we thought it would be best for the committee to rank order them in terms of their preference. And then the final decision is made by the interim executive director, because they are the person who, according to our bylaws, actually does the hiring. So it's very similar to what the mayor makes the final one, but it's with input from the selection committee. And then the conditional offer is made, and then the background check is done. And so the background check is not done until after the person is selected, but there is reference to a preliminary background check. And so I'm guessing the preliminary background check includes such things as verifying their credentials and academic degrees and so forth, and Charmaine can verify that, but that's my guess, is they do a preliminary background check to make sure that the application is accurate. And then they do like the criminal background check and so forth after
Yes,
the person has been.
Yes, to make sure the person is qualified.
Okay, and then week 20 to 22, which would be 4 weeks after the offer's been made, would be with the onboarding process, and that could happen sooner or later depending upon the candidate's availability. If they don't currently have a job, they don't have to give notice to their current employer. If a person has to move to San Diego, they may need an additional week or two. So, but that's just, and again, this whole thing is maybe just put tentative time schedule, because this may need to be modified as we go along. If, for example, there's a large number of applications and the selection firm says they can't get through them all in 2 weeks, then we can modify that. Okay, and then the next one is the job description, which you've actually already gone over, and I didn't make any changes to it except for 2. I changed the word assistant executive director to deputy executive director, since that's the term that the city uses for the second in command. And I put at the end the compensation range, because when the city posts positions on their website, they put what the range is, and this is what the range. I think we budgeted for a little over $90,000, which is kind of in the middle of the range. But that's the only change I made to that, and we can go through it. But we've gone through this at previous meetings of this committee, and we didn't make any changes to it. So, how does that look? Are we good to?
Doug, can you go back up to that? Brandon asked me to remind you to go back up to the section where I had recommended a change, but then I had to step away for a moment.
Yes, and so that was okay. Let me move my.
Yeah, this looks fine to me. I see what you've done. It looks fine to me.
Okay, and so does that look good? Seeing no hands raised, then Charmaine can take this and she can share it with I guess it's purchasing and contracts, and then she can do the bid process. And I think the plan is to use the same 3 firms that the city used for the chief race and equity officer search. And so hopefully, this is sufficient. If not, Charmaine will let us know and we can discuss it. But hopefully, but and if it only requires minor modifications, she can work with Brandon and me to make the modifications before she starts getting the bids. Okay. And was Tiffany able to join us? Oh, I see I had a message in chat. No, that was just Patrick saying he was stepping away. Was Tiffany able to join us?
Yes, she's here.
Okay, and Tiffany, before you came on board, a question arose last week that Henry was going to get back to us on. We had requested that the commission receive a copy of the second draft of implementation ordinance prior to it being considered by PSNLN. And Henry said it was his understanding that the city can't release it to anybody until they release it to the public. So the same time that it's posted to the public would be the first time that it could be given to the commission. And he was going to check on that. He also was going to check to see that if that's the case, whether or not they can post it earlier than normal. Normally, I think they post it a certain number of days prior to the meeting, at least 72 hours. And he was going to see if it would be possible to post it, post notice of the meeting 10 days in advance with the attachment. So the commission and other members of the public could review the second draft prior to it being considered by PSNLN. And he was going to get back to us, and I don't know if he had a chance to research that yet or not.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an update on that today, but if I get an update on that, I'll provide it, before the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Tiffany, I think the question really is, can the commission, the interim commission and the public get a copy of the draft as soon as it's made available to the city and PSNLN, irrespective of any agendizing issues or any of that sort of thing? Obviously, there was a big hue and cry because we only received it, the first one, like 3 days before PSNLN, and that's a huge problem. So is there anything in the city, in any code or anything that prohibits the city from releasing that even before the agenda's out, like as soon as you get it? That's really the question, and maybe that's
okay. Thank you for restating the question. And as soon as we get an answer, we will get back to you.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, and again, Tiffany, the request that we're making is that whatever the process is, that the commission have an opportunity to see it 10 days prior to PSNLN. So that's what our request is, and Henry is going to see how they could accommodate that request. Okay, and so then I'm going to stop sharing. And Elena, can you give us back to the agenda? Oh, I think that probably was the end of the agenda. We are okay. Today is the 10th, and so we are going to meet next Friday, and then we're not going to meet the following 2 Fridays. And so what should we put on the agenda for next week?
Elena, can you scroll down to items?
I think we really would, we need to make a plan for what happens when the next draft of the implementation ordinance comes in. And so if we could spend some time just planning,
Okay.
because even 10 days before the meeting is a pretty tight window. Yeah, so if we could just come up with a plan, which could, the part that's community engagement can be delegated to me and to Kate. But then depending on when those 10 days are, we may not have a scheduled open commission meeting. And so,
Right.
on the regular calendar. So, yeah.
Yeah, we may have to schedule a special meeting, and if I recall, we had a special meeting last time for that purpose. When the first draft came out, I could be wrong. Remember, we had one special meeting. I
did.
think it was for that purpose.
Yeah, we did.
And so I think that's a good thing, is to talk about what our game plan is for reviewing the second draft. And so Tiffany, it'd be really helpful if we can get a answer to our question of when it can be released prior to or at next week's meetings. That'll help us in our planning. And then maybe we can also do at least the second item of old business, which was talking about the plan for the hiring process of the policy analyst and the performance auditor. And so I'll keep both of those items on unfinished business, but with the intent to hopefully to begin moving forward on the other hiring process. We should have some feedback from Charmaine on the executive search bid process, and then we can, as Patrick suggested, talk about our game plan for reviewing the second draft. And I think that should be sufficient for next week. Hold on a second here.
And then Tiffany, I think just because I don't know how involved you were in the last process. The only thing is we're trying to avoid what happened last time, where when we had the public safety livable neighborhood meeting, we had, I think it was like an hour of public comments of people concerned by the fact that what got released, and it said there's going to be action taken that day, and everyone was concerned, including the commission. So we're trying to prevent that from happening this time around, and that's why we want to try to see if we can get access to that 10 days in advance so we can actually review it, discuss any concerns we have, and not have a meeting like we had last time where, to be honest, I think the council member I think she felt like she was attacked because she seemed a little defensive, and she's like, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure this doesn't happen. So that's why we're asking for access 10 days early. Not early,
And
just
hopefully with this time around, we'll be able to communicate what that process is so that the community is aware of why the information is being shared and the timeline it's being shared.
Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate that. But I think the problem is we want to make sure we don't get it 3 days before like we did last time, because that's part of what the problem was, I think.
Right. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to communicate more to the community as well.
Perfect.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And is there anything else we need to discuss today? So I think we have an agenda for next week, and then our agenda for the rest of the month would be to enjoy the holidays, and we can go back at it at the beginning of January. Okay, and Charmaine, I will send you the cleaned up draft of our scope of services, so you can see if that meets what the city, city needs, and we can go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, and then I'll see Charmaine and Brandon in half an hour to meet with the PSNLN. I'm not PSNLN, PNC regarding the next step of the review of the bid or bids for the outside legal counsel. Okay, thanks everybody.
Perfect. Thank you.